how do you create your stories to make sure that with the flow and the structure, and so you don't forget things?
I'm an outliner since day one. I mean, I started off as a part-time writer, and every moment counts when you're a part-time writer. So I didn't want to get into a situation in a novel where I've typed 200, 250 pages and I say, this isn't working. I can't really end this. So I've always outlined pretty much, and sometimes in too much detail, where I had to back off and say, I'm going to suck all the juice out of this because I'm going to feel like I've already written it. But I like to get, move by move, motivation, and an ending. You owe your reader a good ending. And how many books have you read where 3/4 of the way through, it's been a great book, and all of a sudden it just peters out. It doesn't end. And I think those are the writers who don't outline and don't have that firm ending. I mean, I don't stick to my outline. Because outlines are great for a broad roadmap, but if you're going to get real close up, something that worked in 2 lines in the outline does not necessarily work at all on the page, and you've got to make a change. And so sometimes you take a more scenic route, but at least if you know where you're going and you know where you're going to end, you can give that reader the catharsis. You're building up tension. You're building up suspense. You really want to release it with a bang, and then the reader feels, okay, I've been told a story, and there's a satisfaction where there is an end. And some people say, well, that's not like real life. A lot of things don't end in real life. I said, well, this is why we call it fiction. This is fiction, and I'm in charge. And I think the best stories have a symmetry. In a sense, what goes around comes around. That doesn't happen in real life. But again, I'm writing fiction, and I'm a storyteller. I don't consider myself really a writer. I'm a storyteller, and I'm the guy that I'd be sitting around a campfire telling stories to get my Bronto burger, because I'm probably not a very good hunter, so I'm going to have to tell stories to the hunters and amuse them, and then they'll throw me a piece of meat. So in a sense, but in order for them to throw me that piece of meat, I got to tell them a good story, and they've got to feel that that it's worth a piece of meat.
What has been your biggest struggle or the thing you had to overcome, either with each novel or just in your career?
I've asked that a lot, and I've had a very boring career in a sense that, it took me a long time to sell my first story. I sold my first short story to a science fiction magazine. It took me a long time. But after that, I pretty much have sold everything I've written. My first novel, I took a short story I had sold to a magazine, and I said, well, I can just take the short story, and I'll continue it. And so I took the short story, I wrote an outline of how it would go, I sent it off to Doubleday. 3 months later, I got an offer on it. And that doesn't usually happen. Your first novel, no agent, you just sent it, and somebody picked it up and liked it and read it. So I didn't have that long struggle where I had to wait tables and starve and shiver in a garret as I'm typing. Then I didn't go looking for an agent. My agent came to me. He was selling foreign rights for Doubleday, and he was handed this book and said, sell this overseas for us. And he read it, and he said, I like it. He called me up. He said, do you have an agent? I said, no. He said, well, I'll represent you. We've been together for close to 30 years now.
Wow.
So, and he turned out, he went from nothing to being one of the top agents in New York City. And so Al Zuckerman, and he heads Writer's House, and he has clients like, Stephen Hawking and Ken Follett and me. But before he had Ken Follett and Nora Roberts and Stephen Hawking, he had me. So we sort of started off together and came up together. So and again, some people can't get an agent, and my agent came to me, and he turned out to be one of the top, in the industry. So I don't have I don't have any hard luck stories to tell on interviews like this, because I always get asked that question. I say, geez, I really didn't have a hard time.
But that's great.
Makes for a different story.
Yes, it's a different story. What would you leave our members with a final advice on either how to get an agent or how to pursue their career?
Well, the first thing is you must write, and then you must finish what you write. And then when you do it, you send it out either to an agent or to a publisher. I mean, there are still publishers who do read unagented manuscripts. They used to be called over the transom manuscripts when there were transoms, and nowadays people don't even know what a transom is. But if you're going to send it to an agent, if you want to get an agent, I would say you have to have a one-page cover letter. And I would make it 3 paragraphs, something about yourself, something about the book, and something about why it's going to be, a bestseller, or why, the public's going to love this. And then, please, use good English. Use your best English. I mean, my agent has showed me cover letters. He said, look at this. He said, would you want to read a book that was written by this guy? He said, he can't write a good cover letter. But that's interesting. And why would I want to read a book now by him? And so a lot of new writers shoot themselves in the foot by some sort of they send like 5-page cover letter, almost every story they've written, and that doesn't really matter to the agent. It doesn't have to have that kind of detail. You say, I'm so and so in the first paragraph. I've been published in here and here and here and here. And now I want to try a novel, and I have a novel, and I've written it, and here's the first 50 pages and an outline of the rest, what the novel's about, why it's going to be marketable. And that's it, 1 page. And an agent can look at that, takes about a minute of his time, and if it's well written, and maybe you throw in a little humor, self-deprecating humor or something like that, and just so there's a little personality comes across, and then you've got a leg up on most of the other cover letters that this guy is going to receive.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time and your helpful
My
advice.
pleasure.
Best of luck with your new book.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us here at Writing Room, and we'll see you soon.